everything I do today was what I got punished for, expelled for, hit for as a child. And now it's a career. It was a problem as a child. It's now an industry as an adult. I've always given credit for my comedy inspiration being Alan Funt. And I remember watching Candid Camera as a kid and being too young to really understand, stand-up comedy or jokes or having any point of reference. But it was easy to understand. I hear my parents listening to the comedy or watching this show and laughing, and it was very easy and very relatable for me to understand Alan Funt saying, "Okay, here's what we're going to do," and he was talking to me at home. We're going to bring this guy into this office. And then we're gonna have a fan blow everything off the desk when he's trying to do work. So this will blow, and he has no idea. So I felt like Alan and I are in on the joke. And then I understood watching this guy and his frustration, trying to keep the papers down and trying to, and he was obviously in a very awkward situation, and that just made me laugh. And I thought, that's comedy. I also thought it was funny, and I watched my family react to it. And then that's on the bright side. On the darker side, I went to school and tried that comedy myself, but without a show and without any notoriety. It doesn't really work alone in a schoolyard or an audience. So needless to say, Alan Funt is one of the reasons I do not have a GED. I don't like jokes. I've never liked jokes. I've always said, like, if somebody goes, you want to hear a funny joke? The fact that it's a joke, it never made me funny. A priest, a horse, and a Chinaman never really walked into the bar. And if they did, you weren't there and you don't know what they said. So to me, it's like make-believe. But if something's real and you see somebody reacting to something, to me, that's almost funny. And the more uncomfortable and the more awkward it is, the funnier it is. And sometimes people have said, my whole career is now based on, a big part of my career is hidden camera or hidden agenda or awkward moments, even on stage as a stand-up. And I, thank that kind of television for it. But, people might say that, it's awkward or it might be mean, but I think the seed of every piece of humor is at somebody's expense. Even if you make it up, even if you don't make it up, if somebody gets a pie in the face in old vaudeville, what are you laughing at? You're laughing at his, discomfort. That guy didn't want it, or a clown falling. What are you laughing at? You're laughing at the clown having a tough time. So when that kind of comedy is mounted in a very real situation, a la Candid Camera or, a hidden agenda, to me, it just rings so true and relatable. So, and it's so entertaining on so many different levels. Because my stand-up comedy, even though I doubt that anybody could see the similarity, harkens back to that kind of television, the hidden camera, because what I love in comedy is honesty. I don't like to make things up. And from the moment I walked up on stage, unwittingly, I was honest. And as far as not having anything to say, I didn't prepare. I never did homework at school. Why was I going to do it for comedy? So I walked up without knowing what the ramifications of being unprepared were, and I got nervous. And at the beginning, I said, I'm nervous, I don't know what to do. And I was giggling, and people started giggling with me. And then I started going, what? Tell me what? And that became my catchphrase, what? And I didn't have anything to do, and I have OCD, and I had gloves with me, and out of a lack of anything else to do, I pulled a rubber glove on my head, and that became a signature piece. So I've always dealt in a very honest world, and even now to this day, when I get up on stage and I'm in concerts in front of thousands of people, and I'll do interviews beforehand, and they'll say, "What can we expect?" And my answer is always, "I don't know." I do have an arsenal of material that I can fall back on, but I love to be taken off that path, and I love when it gets awkward, and I love when it gets uncomfortable, and I love when something happens in the room, and that's my favorite kind of comedy, is just that real, kind of reactive kind of comedy. For stand-up, for me, I've kind of equated it to a roller coaster. I like roller coasters. I like going to amusement parks and going on thrill rides. I don't like the thrill rides. I don't like the other rides. I'm not big on amusement parks because you touch things. But the ride itself, I do like. And what I like about it is the thrill, and the higher it is, and the closer you think you're coming to death, the more dangerous it seems, and the faster it goes, and the bigger the drop, the more your adrenaline pumps, and the more you want to go on again. If you just went on a roller coaster, it kind of just, slowly glid along the trees, and your hair was blowing in the wind, which I would have no idea what that was like. But I wouldn't go on again. It would probably be boring. That same kind of exhilaration is what I get on stage. I don't know, every minute is like you're just peaking. You're just coming over that. I don't want to, though I do have, as I said, an arsenal of material that I could fall back on. I want something to happen. I want a light to go out. I want the sound to screw up. I want somebody to yell something out, just so that that moment becomes very special and becomes awkward, and I have to try to get over that awkward moment. And when I get over that awkward moment and something happens and I'm enveloped in laughter, and I feel like the whole room is laughing with me, like it's a giant party and I'm the center of attention, there is no more comforting, warm, exciting place to be on earth than stand-up comedy. And that is why, regardless of everything I've done throughout my career, from hosting to doing voiceovers to doing whatever, my most comfortable, my most exciting, my most thrilling place that I continue to do 200 nights a year is live stand-up comedy. I give so little thought to what makes up my act, besides, making me laugh. And, maybe that sounds right. A lot of comics I hear, if they can make one person laugh, then they've done their job. Truly, honestly, it's me. If I find that one person is me, if I think it's funny and I'm having a good time, as luck would have it, it seems like the room goes along with me. So at the beginning, if you look at my early stuff, I didn't have an act. I didn't have a discipline of writing an act, but I would walk into a store, or somebody would give me something, and there'd be some little funny prop, and usually with nothing even attached to it, no material. It was just goofy, and that was my aura. And I would take it on stage and do it. As time went on, I never made a conscious effort to say, you know what, I better not be a prop comic. I respect anything that gets a laugh from strangers. If you go to a comedy show on like an amateur night and you see somebody do terribly, nobody's there on their own accord. They're always there because somebody told them they were funny. They were sitting at dinner and said, oh, you should be a comedian. Truth be told, and I think it's luck, really pure luck, even though there's a lot of skill involved, pure luck that your sense of humor and your sensibility touches other people's. The fact that I do what I do, I've been doing it all my life, but the fact that I've walked into a room and I do what I do, and other people find it funny and want to buy tickets and see me or turn on the television and watch me, I feel blessed. But everything I do today was what I got punished for, expelled for, hit for as a child, and now it's a career. It was a problem as a child. It's now an industry as an adult. I've always tried to go in the natural direction, but as life would have it, as my luck would have it, it's always been the most unnatural direction, which has been wonderful for me in television, because I thought everybody at the time was doing sitcoms in the late 70s and early 80s. So I spoke to my agent, who set up a meeting for me to make that natural transition into a sitcom. And the sitcom mecca at the time, one of them was MTM, Mary Tyler Moore's company, was famous for her own show and a couple of other sitcoms that were going there. And maybe at the time they had one drama, Hill Street Blues. So I went and met with Molly LaPata, who was just a general casting person at MTM. And as I sat down there and she said, can you act? And I said, well, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. And so she gave me these sides to read. A little piece of a script. And I started reading it, and it was all this medical terminology. I had no idea what it was. And then she said, that's very good, come down the hall. And I went down the hall, and there was a group of people in the room. I later found out that those people, there was Bruce Paltrow, and Mark Tinker, and John Macius, and Tom Fontana. And I went down to the room, and they said, could you read that scene? And I read the scene. I got halfway through this scene, the medical jargon, and went, thank you. I didn't even read like two lines. They went, thank you, and I went home, and I remember telling my wife, she goes, how did it go? And I went, I don't think it went real well. She goes, do you feel bad? And I said, you know, I don't feel terrible. And she goes, why? I go, because it wasn't funny. I had no idea what I was reading for, and it just wasn't funny. This is like the worst sitcom I had read in my life. And I get a call, Brandon Tartikoff. I get a call to go to Brandon Tartikoff's, this is a Friday, the same day, to go to Brandon Tartikoff's office at NBC. And they want to see me again. So I go there, I'm just confused, which is how I spend a good part of my life anyhow. And I go there, and the same guys are in the room, plus Brandon Tartikoff, and they have me read that same scene again. And they asked me to wait outside, and then somebody comes outside and says, we'll see you Monday. And I went home, and I thought, this torturous, not funny sitcom, it doesn't even make sense to me. I'm going D5, lactated ringers, colloids, odate of blood, and intubation tray. You know, all this negative terminology. They'll see me Monday again. They want me to read it. And then my agent calls me on the way home and says, not on the way home, no cell phones, when I got home, and says, congratulations, you got it. What? And there was a show called St. Elsewhere. And they were in the midst of shooting. They had been shooting for 3 days and didn't like it, and they were recasting, and it was an emergency, and I replaced somebody. And I became Fiscus. And that was my transition into sitcoms. I got that show. I replaced an illustrious actor who went on to get nominated for an Academy Award, by the way. I replaced a guy by the name of David Paymer. Mr. Saturday Night. He played Billy Crystal's brother in Mr. Saturday Night. I showed up on the set that Monday of St. Elsewhere, and I recognized everybody. You know, one of my favorite movies of all time was The Graduate, and there was Bill Daniels, and I'm an Alfred Hitchcock fan, and I saw Norman Lloyd from Spellbound, and I saw these actors, you know. And it was a serious show, and I went up to Bruce Paltrow, and I said, listen, I was sure they had made a mistake. And I said, you know, can you recommend like an acting coach or a school for me to attend? Because I'm going to be totally honest with you now. I've never done anything like this. And he told me, young man, don't go anywhere. Just stay here. And you are in the best acting college of your life. And for 6 years, I was surrounded by the best writers, the best directors, the best actors that anybody could ever hope to be surrounded by in television. And I had no idea, but that is truly iconic television that I am happy to be a part of. It launched a lot of careers, you know, like from Denzel Washington. It was actually, who's married to Tim Robbins' first shot coming out of acting school. I think a young Kathy Bates was in the show for a little while. It was, I mean, the people that came out of that show, the directors, the writers, the other television that was spawned from it, is just truly amazing. In the midst of it, I had no idea that I was doing something, but I'm lucky. This was a huge discipline for me because of where I came from and what I continue to do, because I have, in as far as lines and whatnot, there are no boundaries and no marks to hit and no specific words to recite in stand-up comedy. The writing on St. Elsewhere was precise, and the need by the producers to have the actors speak exactly as written. No room for improvisation, no room to add your own preposition. You know, it was exactly that. So what was really scary is you've seen it since, but I think we were the first show to do these long meandering shots where we would do like 6 pages of dialogue all in one shot without a cut, where they would come down a corridor, turn and turn. And you know, the scariest thing was, you know, 2 characters would meet and one would go off into the elevator, and then they'd go into the elevator and 2 people would be talking in the elevator while the crew was changing the outside from 2nd floor to 3rd floor and the colors on the outside. So when we walked out, it looked like we were on a different floor. And then we'd walk down that hall and we'd go to a nurse's station, or another pair of characters. And then they would go, and then you'd come out of the room. You'd be the last one in the 6th page with 2 lines. If you got one word wrong, they'd go, cut! From the top, and everybody had to go back to the top. So the pressure to be perfect was so incredible. As tough as that was, what an amazing disciplined training ground that was for any of us who had anything to do with St. Elsewhere. I remember sitting around with Norman Lloyd and just, like with my jaw just dropped open, just hearing the stories of, Charlie Chaplin and Alfred Hitchcock and what it was like on those sets. And I would also ask him questions about how he would, what is the mindset to get into this kind of scene and how do you play it? I mean, everybody was so open and helpful, and that's why even today I will get a call. I don't care if it's 2 a.m, Denzel will call me from a movie set and say, Howie, how would you play this? And I'm more than happy to help him and be there for him. What was amazing is the first show I did that portrayed anything from real life, in the sense that, we were on a medical show, so doctors were drawn to this. And I can't tell you how many letters I started getting about, from doctors saying, oh, you're exactly like my fellow resident, or you're exactly like me, which as a human being scared the hell out of me, because I always put doctors on a different level. But then I found out they're just people. In fact, so much so that I had my first child in the midst of the St. Elsewhere run. And every doctor in the hospital wanted to come in and, share war stories, or their favorite episode. But they didn't just want to walk into the room while my wife was in labor and just to say that they were a fan, so they wanted to seem useful. So every doctor would walk in, put a glove on, and while they were asking me about episodes, would tell me how dilated she was. After the 5th doctor, it was like my wife was a puppet. I said, guys, please, I'll meet you outside, I'll give autographs, I'll do whatever. Just keep your fingers out of my wife. I'd rather give autographs than just have everybody poking my wife. The litmus test as a comedian, I was a comedian. I became a comedian. I decided to, give up everything else in life and be a stand-up comic. But at that time, in the mid-'70s, late '70s, early '80s, the litmus test for being considered a comedian by anybody was doing The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's show. It's really funny, whenever you bumped into somebody, if you weren't known, people would say, what do you do for a living? And you would say, I'm a comedian. And somebody would say, well, have you ever been on The Tonight Show? You go, well, no. And they would look at you with disdain. Well, then why did you say you were a comedian? And I was doing just about every other show. I was on Merv Griffin like 14 times, and I was on the Mike Douglas show, and John Davidson, I did his show. And so I had done a lot of television, but I always wanted to do The Tonight Show. And I remember we used to showcase at the Comedy Store, and the guy that cast The Tonight Show told me I was not the type to be on The Tonight Show. I wasn't specifically a monologist, and I didn't have jokes, and I was just, very silly, and, that's not what they booked on The Tonight Show. So I thought my dreams had been crushed. And then I started watching, and then at that time, Joan Rivers started doing the show as a guest host. And she was like soaring. I mean, her ratings were even, if not higher than Johnny's on the night that she was on. I mean, she was a phenomenon. It was the first time that we saw somebody, this before TMZ, talking about Elizabeth Taylor's weight and things. I mean, today it doesn't seem so shocking, but I remember everybody tuning in to hear what she would say about somebody, and it was shocking and on the edge and fresh and young and different than what we were seeing every night. So I became a big fan of Joan Rivers. And then when Joan, I think at that time she was living in New York, but when she would come out here to do The Tonight Show, she would work her monologue out at the Comedy Store. So I still, even though my dreams were somewhat dashed, I've never given up. I never give up. And so I said, maybe if she sees me, I don't know what that means, but it would be good. So I found out that on a Thursday night, she was going to be working out her routine at the Comedy Store. And I phoned in and I asked the people at the Comedy Store, can you put me up right before Joan Rivers? And they said, okay. And I go, this is my shot. Wait till she sees me, she'll want me. And as luck would have it, I wake up that day and I have like 104 fever. I mean, it's like crazy. I'm lying in bed and I can't stop shaking, and I've got aches all over my body, and I can't even move. And I go, what are the chances of this happening on this day? This is not meant to be. But still, as I said, I don't give up. I said, I'm going. My wife tried to talk me out of it. I remember driving through the canyon. I'm driving through Laurel Canyon. I can barely see straight. I'm like dizzy, and I'm shaking, and I can't. I've got the heat. It's like 100 degrees in the car, and I'm still shaking. And I get to the Comedy Store, and I'm backstage, and I'm leaning against the wall. I don't even have the energy to stand up. And Joan Rivers comes into the room, and it's my turn to go on. They go, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel. And I don't think I'm even walking to the stage. I said, I'm going to pass out before I get to the stage. And I got to the stage, and I said something. And that first laugh, I heard that first laugh. And that first laugh was like an antibiotic. You know, it just surged through my body, and the adrenaline kicked in. And I started just, you know, whatever I was saying, I just kept saying, and it was laughter and laughter, and I felt enveloped. I had been cold for, you know, freezing cold for like 12 hours, and now I was just enveloped in laughter and warmth and everything. And then I said, good night. And I walked off the stage and went to the side door, and I said, I'm going to wait. Joan's going to go on next, and I'm going to wait. But as soon as I walked off the stage, it came over me again like a wave of illness. And I went to the stairs that lead out to Sunset Boulevard, and I said, I'm going to wait here. So I was standing there, and she did her act, and I could hear the laughter, and then the roar and the excitement in the room, and then she finished, and she came off the stage, but she didn't leave the room, and I said, I'll wait here, and then I couldn't stand up anymore, so now I'm sitting on the stairs. And you know, half hour goes by, 45 minutes goes by, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just I can't even, you know, there's nothing I can do. I can't function, but I've made it all this way. I gotta make eye contact with her. Finally, after an hour, she comes out of the room. I guess she was talking to other comics. I'm like hunched over on the stairs, and I like look up at Joan as Joan is walking by me, and she just goes, you're really funny. And I go, you think so? And she goes, yeah. She goes, have you ever been on The Tonight Show? And I go, no, but next week's my birthday. And she said, who's your agent? And I told her my agent, and that's it. And then I barely made it home. The next day, my agent calls me and said, Joan called and said she wants you on The Tonight Show. And I couldn't believe it. And the next week, I went on The Tonight Show with Joan Rivers. I did panel. I did my act on the panel, on the couch. I did it. It was so exciting. First of all, to be backstage, this is without Johnny Carson, as soon as Doc Severinsen hit that da-da-da-da-da, you knew that that's what the world was tuning into. There weren't other talk shows. I mean, that's, at night, anybody who had their TV on was watching that. And at that time, you know, your life changes forever. There is not a television show, short of this particular one, that will change somebody's life forever. You know, like before that, it was the Ed Sullivan Show, right? When the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show, Beatlemania took over. Elvis took over. On the Tonight Show, Freddie Prinze blasted off of the Tonight Show. So did many other people. That's where I knew stars of that day. So now I was on, and it was so exciting, and I did great. And Joan made my dream come true. And as luck would have it, the next day after it aired, I got a call from NBC saying Johnny Carson had seen me with Joan. Would I be willing to come back in 2 weeks with him? I thought, oh my God, what are the chances? Yes. And then I thought, you know, I'm not the kind of comic that they like, so I'm going to go on. I was so scared. It was so surreal. And I actually did something, my first Carson appearance, I did something. You know, they go over each step, like every question and every answer and every question. It was all like kind of set up. But I said, I'm going to do one thing that, and I've always done this, which could be a detriment or a positive. I'm going to go, maybe I'll go too far, but people will remember me. This will either solidify my relationship at The Tonight Show and make something out of an appearance, or it won't. And I went through all the material that I was going to do, went on the show. It was so scary. Again, standing backstage and sitting in that desk and looking at Johnny Carson. You know, like you're looking at me now, there's a frame around your TV, but there was no frame. He was right there. I could reach out and touch him, and it was so surreal. And then I thought, I got this one gag I want to do. And I know that if I would have asked the segment producer, he would have said no. And I took out these 3D glasses. And I said, do you like 3D movies? And he said, I knew he'd say yeah. So he said, yeah. I said, put these on, put these on. So he puts them on. And then I had this bag filled with little stuffed animals. And I started taking out the stuffed animals and I threw it right at his face. Like just boom, right in the face. And I said, doesn't it look like it's coming right at you? And there was like a pause. And to me, it seemed like 2.5 days. And then he just broke out laughing. And that was it. That was it. He loved me. You know, and he loved that, and I did it 22 times with Johnny Carson after that. And, you know, my life changed forever as a stand-up comic once I started doing the Tonight Shows. Then I started getting HBO specials and a bunch of other things, and, you know, my life was never the same. My notoriety was never the same. I'm known for going all out and sometimes going too far. I did 22. I probably could have done 32, but the last time I was on, they called me. The last time I was on with Johnny. I did it with guest hosts after that because the people there liked me, but I think I made Johnny's job a lot more difficult than it needed to be. I was asked to show up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was called and said that they had a fallout. Sammy Davis Jr. was supposed to be on. I think it's the time when he got diagnosed, but he couldn't show up, and I was a safe guest, they thought. And they said, could you come down and do the Tonight Show? And I said, I can't, I got nothing, you know, I can't. I'm in the middle of shooting something, I can't. And they said, please, just come down, you'll be okay. I said, but I can't even do a pre-interview. I don't know what I'm doing. They go, you're always funny. I go, you'll just go with it? They go, yeah. So I went to, I was on the set of a movie that I was shooting at the time, and I went to the prop department, and they had this 40-foot saber-toothed tiger. I don't know what it was for, but I said, can I have that shipped to NBC, and how much would that cost? And the guy says, like $500. So I wrote a check for $500, and then I said, can you put it on a dolly so I can roll it? And they put it on a dolly for me, and they're going to deliver that to Burbank. And then I saw there was a carrot. I think it was a carrot. I can't remember. But a carrot, and a giant carrot, like the size of a room. I said, can you tie that on top of the saber-toothed tiger? And they said yes. I don't know that they get that request a lot, but it was me. And I said, just deliver it. And then I called down the Tonight Show and I said, I'm getting a delivery. And they said, what is it? And I said, I don't know, but just go with it. And they said, fine. So what I did was the Tonight Show starts and they go, ladies and gentlemen, Johnny says the always funny Howie Mandel. And the curtain opens, they page the curtain, and I come out and the audience is really applauding, and I come out and I have this rope and I'm pulling the saber-toothed tiger out, and the audience is kind of applauding and laughing, and it gets to the riser of where the desk is, and I try to lift the paws up in the front desk, but it's really heavy, so I ask Ed to give me a hand, and Ed gets up and gives me a hand. We get the paws up, and by this time the applause has kind of died down, and then I ask Doc Severinsen from the band if he can come over and push the other side, and he pushes the other side to get it up, and it gets up and it blocks the, you know, and they didn't really move the cameras on that show. I mean, those shots are already set, but I can hear in everybody's headset, the director's going, we can't get, you know, Johnny, we got to shoot him from above because Johnny's totally blocked. And I took an eternity, and it's just awkwardly silence forever. And then I sit down, and Johnny goes, well, what is this? And I say, I don't want to talk about it. And I guess that, you know, that didn't play really well. They asked me a couple more questions, and then they went to commercial, and I never got asked back with Johnny. I took a shot. They don't all work out. Well, I like danger, but I'm Jewish. So Jewish danger, I'm not going to get hurt, just humiliated. You know, so that's what I do. I live on the edge. I'm like, this is like a Jewish X game where you can, you know, that's the kind of danger. I've always done things without thinking of the ramifications of how it will affect my career or whatever. I really don't think. In fact, I don't even have an ending to this answer for this question, and I don't know where it's going to lead me. And I may say something that will be very, very controversial and get me into a lot of trouble. But I've decided to stop talking right now. Well, I think the people that made it in this business and continue to make it are true to themselves and who they are. I think it's not really about, you know, if you're a good joke teller or a good joke writer, then you're a writer. But I think that if you're true to yourself and you have a character that people, want to see, those are the people that really burst out. I mean, Jay Leno is definitely a character. Letterman is definitely a character. And I have so much respect for anybody that shows up on stage and you kind of know who they are, because there were the people, even in my day and age, that did The Tonight Show many times. I had friends that did it 10 times and you would not know their name. And then there are people that did it once and then boom, they exploded. People like Roseanne and Louis Anderson, and that's their whole career came out of one 6-minute shot on The Tonight Show. Jerry Seinfeld, like all these people that you know today are because of one shot. I have ADD and I forget what the question was. What was the question? Oh, they're all, but Richard Pryor for me was probably my biggest inspiration. Not that I'm anything like Richard Pryor, but I watched when I came to LA, he was writing Live on the Sunset Strip, which was a very famous concert film that he did. And I watched, it was the first time that I watched somebody who had the discipline to come up each and every night to the Comedy Store, and people were lined up around the block, and every star of Hollywood, actors and musicians, would show up at the Comedy Store to watch him do his work. And he was brave enough I'd watch him hone his act, and he used the comedy club like a gymnasium, where he would do a routine and it wasn't funny, but he would go so far until it was funny, and then the next night he would use that same routine and then structure it and hone it and mold it into brilliant comedy. So he was the one I kind of, in my mind, for me, taught me to take those chances, to do those things. Where's it going to come from? You gotta be willing to put yourself out on the edge if you want anything to come of it. Otherwise, to make it a bigger analogy, that's how we found out the world wasn't flat. If nobody would have, got on that boat and drifted all the way here to America. Two of my other big iconic comedic inspirations are Steve Martin. Steve Martin was the first guy that and it's just me articulating, where the comedy came out of attitude as much as out of the material. Because, I remember seeing him, I think he did this I think he was on the Smothers Brothers or the Glenn Campbell, some summer show, where he was a writer and then they would have him come out and I remember he came out and there was this huge buildup to his nose on the microphone routine. And I was hysterical. I just thought it was funny. He had this huge buildup, and all it was his nose on the microphone. And I remember going to school the next day and telling people who hadn't seen it, you got to see this guy. He put his nose on the microphone, and a lot of people went, well, I don't get it. I go, well, that's the funny. The funny was that he made like it was a big thing, and it was nothing. And today, as I explain it, you understand it. But I don't think people were making fun of something not funny till I saw Steve Martin, where I thought, there is the definitions of comedians and comics. One says funny things and one says things funny. And he was the first guy that I was aware of that his attitude alone was hysterical, but he was also very prolific and a great writer. But his character was great. And Woody Allen. Woody Allen, again, another one whose character was hysterical. When I saw him sitting on The Tonight Show talking to Johnny about how tough it was to be a sex symbol, I was like in tears. And it wasn't something I can explain. I said, you got to see the guy, and he's like a nebbishy, little quirky guy, and it's hysterical. And that whole neurotic, little quirky guy is the essence of his stand-up comedy, which it started as, and his writing, and now his movies. I have been incredibly lucky in the sense that, well, I don't know if I've been lucky. I've been, I think there are opportunities for a lot of people, but not everybody steps through each door that is available to them. But as luck would have it, those doors have opened for me, and I've had the ability to be in great drama, great comedy, game, animation. I've done it all. So as I say it out loud, I realize how phenomenal it is just to have me be part of this show. For me, and it's just been a big part of my life, a sense of humor is something that defines who we are. And a sense of humor, for me, is not somebody who can tell jokes or even somebody who is funny, but is somebody that is aware of, who has a sense like another sense, like a sense of taste, a sense of smell, a sense of color, a sense of fashion, who has a sense where they can find the humor where it's not that apparent the humor lies. And usually it's in a dark place, or it's in yourself. You know, if you can laugh at yourself or laugh at a foible, your own personal, then that kind of defines who you are. And that's always been my kind of, and it doesn't, if you don't have a sense of humor, I don't think any less of you, but I think that, I don't think that somebody with a sense of humor is better than somebody without, but I think that the essence of who we are, for me, is the level of humor that you occupy within yourself. Because for me, you know, humor gets me through the toughest and hardest times, and I believe that if you have that, it's an asset. Not that you'll be a comedian, not that you can write anything, but it's a great tool in your personality to cope.